This is the Toyota Auris. Now, before we get into the review, I'd like to just show you something. You see, sometimes I like to find out what car names actually mean. So if I type Auris into this translator tool, it identifies it as being Latin and it means ear. Let's just try another one actually, another Toyota name, Prius. That means first. I don't know why I just told you that, or just thought I would. Anyway, let's get on with the review. So the Auris, it starts from £16,000. That's pretty reasonable, but if you click up there, you can join 2 million people at carwow.co.uk. You can build your ideal car. Then within 24 hours, you'll get offers back from top dealers in the UK, and you'll be able to compare prices without having to haggle. So, it seems like good value, this car, doesn't it? £16,000. However, that £16,000 car has absolutely no equipment on it, and it comes with a puny engine for starters. And you don't even get things like Bluetooth. You don't get an infotainment screen. You can't have that car. The one you want is this. It's the business version, and it's got pretty much all you need. The only problem is that starts from £21,000. So then the Auris becomes a lot less competitive. But in terms of the kit on this business model, so you get things like heated seats, which is nice, and like I said, this infotainment screen, which is pretty easy to navigate. The graphics aren't the sharpest, and it's not the fastest to respond, but it's very easy to use. The only drawback is that you don't have physical navigation buttons down the side. You just have touch sensitive ones, and they're a little bit more difficult to operate while you're driving. Now, if you want to see my full in-depth video review of the infotainment system, just click up there and you can go and watch it. In terms of the rest of the interior of the car, I actually quite like it. I like the way you've got a flat dash. It feels sort of sporty, and you really do sit in this car. The quality of the materials, yeah, that soft touch, that's soft touch. The leather on the steering wheel feels nice, and soft touch here, and the armrests are pretty yielding. Yeah, it's actually quite nice in here. It's got a sturdy quality feel to it, like you'd expect from a Toyota. Cubby space is good as well. Big door bins, reasonable storage under here. There's a couple of cup holders here and here, and the glove box it's a really good size actually, so that's handy. Let's move on to the back seats, see what it's like. The first thing for me to point out is the fact that these rear doors, they don't open all that wide, which is a bit of a pain if you're trying to manoeuvre a child seat in here, or an elderly relative is trying to get into the back. But once you're in, space is absolutely fine. So look, headroom, it's not too bad at all. People over 6 foot will just about be able to cope. They'll be warned if you get the sunroof, it does eat into headspace a bit back here. Knee room, once again, that's fine. You can just about squeeze your feet under the seat in front for a bit more stretch room, shall we say. Good thing about this car is that the floor is almost completely flat, and that's handy if you need to carry 3 in the back at once, because it does mean that there's plenty of room for everyone's feet. The only slight problem with this particular car is that the body is quite narrow, so when you try and squeeze 3 adults in the back, you know, it's all a bit tight on shoulder room. What's under here, you ask? Well, it's just an armrest, and I don't like that. It's like it's going to give way under your arm. That's pathetic. There's no ski hatch on this car, though I wouldn't say that's a priority in this type of vehicle really, now is it? So let's look at the boot, that's more important. So the capacity for this kind of car isn't actually all that big. There's quite a few cars with bigger boots. For instance, a Volkswagen Golf's boot is bigger, and something like a Skoda Octavia's boot is way bigger, as is that of a Honda Civic. But it's a useful square shape, so it's actually very easy to load. There's not much of a lip to lift stuff over, which is handy. And there are quite a few useful features. So you've got tethering points here, there's a hook there, you've got a 12-volt socket there if you want to plug in a portable vacuum cleaner and clean out the boot, which is something this car could do with, because there's some leaves in there. Under here, there's some storage area, so different separated trays there, and this one has a space-saver spare wheel as well, which is useful. If I fold down the seats, the backs lie pretty flat. There is a bit of a difference in height between the seats and this boot floor, but the way this is designed means you have a ridge, so you can push things quite easily from the back to the front of the car when you're loading heavy items. Now, if you want more information on how much stuff you can fit in this car's boot, click up there to watch my detailed practicality video. You can also see what this car's like with 3 adults in the back, and just how easy it is, or isn't, to fit a child seat.
Now you know what this car is like on the inside, let's find out how it drives.
This Auris is quite a nice car to drive in town, so the steering is very light, they're good for doing things like 3-point turns, the gear shift is fairly positive, the clutch pedals, it's easy to use, and the brakes, they do a good job without being grabby. One thing to watch out for though are some of the engines. So the 1.3 litre petrol and 1.4 litre diesel are just so mind-numbingly slow they'll drive you crazy. Also, those cars are actually fitted with really basic rear suspension, which is no more sophisticated than that you'd find on some child's toy car. And you end up just like bouncing about all over the place over bumps, and the car skips if you go over a bump mid-corner, and it's really unnerving. More expensive cars actually get better rear suspension, and then the car's nice and settled over bumps. It's fine. This one is the 1.2, it has the better rear suspension, it's got a turbocharger on its petrol engine, and it's fairly nippy, it's smooth, it's returning an okay 41 miles per gallon. This is the engine I'd have. If you need to do loads of miles, you probably want the 1.6 litre diesel, which is fairly punchy, it's economical, but it is a little bit noisy. And if the noise bothers you, maybe get the hybrid. So in town you can run on electric power alone, and then it's pretty silent. Speaking of travelling in town, visibility is generally good. One thing that's not so good though is the view out the back window. The window is quite small. Now if you click up there, you can see for yourself by joining me for a 360-degree passenger ride video. When you head out on the motorway, the Auris, yeah, it's absolutely fine. You know, if you've got one of the more powerful engines, it can plod along at quite a reasonable pace, keep up with the traffic, and even overtake sometimes. The seats are comfy as well. There is one thing that does stand out that's a little bit frustrating. It's the fact that you do get quite a bit of wind whistle from around this windscreen area. I don't think this car is quite as quiet to travel in at speed as a Vauxhall Astra, but it's all right. Now you might be wondering, what is this Auris like when you encounter a twisty road? Well, I'm going to drive this car in a way that no Auris driver will really ever drive it, and it does all right. It goes around corners, it grips and it goes, and it'll be absolutely fine. It's not fun. There is no fun to this car in any way, shape or form. So something like I say at Leon, if you're back to back with this car, you'll be like, oh yeah, I want to drive the Leon. It's definitely more of a giggle. Hatchbacks can be fun. This is an A to B car, and it does it competently. The kind of look on your face if you're driving an Auris is like this. Other cars or the hatchbacks can actually make you look like this. Just depends on what you're after.
It's time for the CarWow 5 annoying things about this car.
I don't know why Toyota insists on using these digital clocks. It just feels like you're in the previous century. The rear windscreen wiper is just so tiny. All it does is clear a very small porthole for you to peer through. There's a handy 12-volt charger there for your mobile phone. If only this cubby was big enough to actually hold, the phone, What is it with this car and dropping electronic devices? Unlike with some of the cars at this price, you have to put on the light for the vanity mirror manually, and you know what's going to happen? Yes, your passenger will shut that, forget they left the light on, and then it will just drain the battery. The person on this side of the car has a pocket to keep their iPad in, whereas the person who sits over this side of the car doesn't.
Don't worry, there's still plenty to like about this car. Here's the CarWow 5 cool features.
All but the entry-level car has a reversing camera as standard. The runners for the seatbelt means that they don't snag when you fold the seats down. The Auris comes with a comprehensive 5-year warranty, though you'll probably never have to use it because, after all, this is a Toyota. On most cars, you have to rotate the seat recliner. On this, you just pull up a lever and off you go. Most Toyota Aurises come with a suite of safety systems, including auto emergency braking. So I'll demonstrate it now. It should stop the car. It should stop. It should stop. Okay, you can override it if you want to try and run over your presenter. Stop it. If you click up there, you can go to carwow.co.uk for more information on this car. Also, you can get offers from dealers to find out the best price you can get on it. Compare them without having to haggle. So, what do I think of the Toyota Auris? Should you avoid it? Should you consider it? Should you shortlist it, or should you just go right ahead and buy it? Well, I reckon you should consider the Toyota Auris. You see, it's a pretty decent car. It's just that there's other hatchbacks which are better.